everyone. All right, just checking all the technology, see if we're up and running. Okay, looks like we are. Hey. All right. Hope everyone's doing well. Hey, everyone. All right, just... Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Ponzarek. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a school psychologist. Have been in this field for over 20 years. And nowadays, because I'm not employed by a school district right now, I provide a lot of trainings for school districts, a lot of trainings for school psychologists, either directly for the districts or in California for the SELPAs. I also have some online platforms where I help support school psychologists as well. And one of the questions that we've been having some discussions about a lot lately is this question right here. Does the student require special education? Right? Such an important piece when we're talking about our evaluations. And I know so many of us spend so much time determining what are the appropriate assessment tools for the student, tracking down parents and teachers to get them to fill out our rating scales and answer our questions and writing up a report. I will tell you that I just press pause on a report I'm writing right now that of course is due tomorrow because I like doing things last minute. No, it was one of my goals for this year is not to procrastinate report writing. It's not working out really well right now yet, but it's still a goal, still a goal. But we do all of these different pieces and we are really well versed in all of the different eligibility criteria. All of our eligibility criteria also require this additional component here. Does a student require special education? And if we want to see the specific wording, right, a lot of us love, especially where can I find that? Where is that in code, right? So here's some specific language. Of course, it's not going to all fit on the screen here, so dots along the way, right? But in IDA section 30.8, we have information here about that a child with a disability, like what does that mean? It means a child evaluated in accordance with all of our rules and regulations, right? As having an intellectual disability, and then the next are all the other areas of eligibility that we may be considering, and who by reason thereof needs special education and related services. And I think that's an important piece right here. The needs, not would benefit from. Because these are some of the conversations I have sometimes with the rest of my assessment team members, sometimes with my families. I think they would benefit from special education. And in my mind, I'm like, I think most people would benefit from special education. That's like saying, would I benefit from a one-to-one person walking around with me all day? Of course I would benefit from that, right? I would love if someone wandered around after me and held all my stuff and reminded me what I was supposed to be doing, right? But it doesn't mean that's a requirement for me, right? So it's important that we really look at that word that they need special education or they require special education to be able to access that core curriculum, right? That's some other key language here is the student or how is the student accessing that core curriculum and can the student's needs be met within general education? These can be some additional questions to add in to our conversations when we're discussing eligibility for special education. Now, I would like to think, and when I reflect on my 20 plus years career in this amazing field, a lot of the children that we're evaluating because we've exhausted gen ed resources. We really feel like the student is not able to access the core curriculum without specially designed instruction. But there's definitely students, again, as a reflection, that as we're going through the information, they might have a disability, but it doesn't always mean they require special education. So here's a couple of thoughts that I had about this. Had this conversation recently with a group of psychologists. We were talking about low incidence disabilities, and low incidence disabilities are, in their own little category. We look at them a little bit differently, but one of the other things we think about low incidence disabilities, so hearing impairments, visual impairments, orthopedic impairments, most of the time for those kind of impairments, as the school psychologist on the team, I'm not really there to say whether or not you have a hearing impairment, right? Like an audiologist is telling me that, right? Someone's telling me about the kid's vision impairment, right? I am not all of a sudden randomly diagnosing orthopedic impairments, right? Like other people are doing that and giving us the information, but just because a student has a hearing impairment or just because a student has an orthopedic impairment, as we know, does not automatically mean anything, right? We still need to see, do they require or do they need special education to access the core curriculum, right? Same thing with like our students with ADHD. I was thinking of a student I evaluated a number of years ago now, and he was attending a private school at the time of the evaluation that the public school was doing, and parent had requested an evaluation, and it seemed very appropriate. The child had a diagnosis of attention deficit, really was struggling academically at school, and so, did all the things we do. Went and observed the kid, read through every piece of paper in the kid's file, talked to the teacher, talked to the parent, evaluated the student, did a comprehensive evaluation. I do them, you do them, we all do them, right? When we came to the IEP meeting and we were looking at SLD, we were looking at other health impairment, it was probably one of the first times in a while that I had really brought up this question: does the student need special education? Does the student require specially designed instruction? And I'll never forget this because I had the teacher from, one of his teachers from the private school there. I had his mom there, and of course our assessment team there as well. And, a lot of times when I talk about eligibility, we kind of just quickly go through that piece there. But I was like, what does the team think here? Like, Mom, you know him best. Teacher, you're the one working with him every day. Do you believe he requires specially designed instruction? Or do you think his needs could be met in the general ed setting with accommodations? And I won't forget this because both of them, both the parent and the teacher looked at me and they said, probably accommodations will work for him. And then, of course, I'm pausing. I'm like, in my head thinking, why are we all here then? Like, why did we do all this work? Like, couldn't we have had this conversation a lot earlier on? He was a great kid. He was great to know, right? We all have these kind of situations sometimes. But here was a kid who had attention deficit. He had limited strength, vitality, or alertness. Definitely was able to see that. Observation showed that. Teacher comments showed that. Rating scales showed that. And there was an educational impact. He was struggling to get his work completed on time. Like all those different components were there. Like when you think of like an other health impairment eligibility. But then that last piece, does he need special education? And the team was like, you know what? I bet you we could try some accommodations, maybe some better homeschool communication. And I don't think you need specially designed instruction. That was a really good conversation. It was a really good conversation to be able to have there. And so I invite you, when you are looking at eligibility and you're really thinking about this last piece here, right? Whether we're talking about a hearing impairment, whether we're talking about other health impairment, whether we're talking about a student who might meet eligibility under autism, there are a lot of different pieces that we need to look at. And we know an outside diagnosis or even meeting all of the criteria doesn't automatically mean that the student needs special ed. So, second piece there, of course, would, can the needs be met within general education? That's an interesting piece. And I don't know about all of you who are hanging out with me live or maybe going to listen to this replay. I think for myself, when I reflect on the different schools I've worked with, the different school districts I've worked with, I definitely wish that we had some more things available in general education. But sometimes I am at schools where we do have some things in general education that, either haven't been tried or we tried them and we actually have data to prove that they're working for this student. That's such wonderful information. If you have that intervention program, whether it's a reading intervention program, a behavior intervention, a lot of our schools have a lot more mental health support, so a mental health intervention. If even like during our evaluation, if the student hasn't participated in that, might be something to consider would be having the student participate in that intervention, if it's available, during our evaluation process, right? During our 50 or 60-day timelines to try and help us figure out, can their needs be met within general education? Because I think sometimes, I know I've been in meetings where we're pausing and we're really wondering, like, does he need this, or could his needs be met within general education? And the more data that we have, you and I love data, right? We love data. It's so helpful. So I would encourage you to think about maybe some of the upcoming evaluations, upcoming meetings that you're having, and be thinking about, are there any students where we really need to have like a good discussion about this as part of our meeting, and not just assume because a child, meets these different criteria that this last prong of this is required, right? Okay. So I think a lot of you might be aware, but I host a community. I call it the Prepared School Psych Community, where school psychologists can sign up and have access to a lot of different resources. They have access to a lot of different support from me and from some of my other team members. You get to ask questions and come to office hours. And this current month, September, we've been talking about presenting evaluation results. We've been having some good conversations during office hours. We're doing a book club this month, all about giving feedback. And next month, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to do some case study walkthroughs. And I decided for these case study walkthroughs in the month of October, this question of, do these students require special education, is what I want to delve into. So I'm going to do 3 separate case studies in the month of October inside this group here, the Prepared School Psych group. We're going to do one about learning disabilities. We're going to do one about other health impairment. We're going to do another one where we're primarily looking at autism. And I'm going to choose cases that aren't those slam dunk kind of cases, right? They're cases where we're talking about this and really trying to figure out, does the student require special education? So if this is something that might be interesting to you, feel free to head over to my website. If you're not already a member of the Prepared School Psych community, you can try it out. You can pay monthly. It's like $12 a month. It's pretty inexpensive to try it on out. And if this is something that you think might be helpful for you, you could head over to my website, jennyponzurek.com, check it out, see if you like it. Come live to any of my case study walkthroughs, or if you can't come live, I record pretty much everything. So you can go ahead and listen at your own time frame as well. So that's kind of all I wanted to share with everyone. I know everyone's so busy. I know I get to go back and finish up a report. I'm wonder how many of you get to do that as well. But I just want to say thank you, everyone who's here and for listening. And if anyone ever has any questions about the membership group, our Prepared School Psych community, feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions. You can either, get me on social media, or feel free to head over to my website at jennyponzurek.com and scroll all the way down on the front page. There's a place to ask me questions as well. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And someone asked a great question. Will the SLD be PSW? All right, a lot of people know I love talking about the patterns of strengths and weaknesses. It probably will, because it's going to be based upon a student that I've worked with. And the last 10 years, all of my cases have been through the PSW model. However, as I'm thinking about that, because that's such a great question, it's not going to be dependent about the SLD eligibility model, because we're going to focus a lot more, like I mentioned, on whether or not the student requires special ed. So I have a kid in my mind right now that I'm thinking might be a good kiddo to talk about. And it wouldn't matter, like eligibility wouldn't matter if we were using the discrepancy model or PSW. It's really more about answering that question, does the student require special education? So whether you use discrepancy or PSW, if you're one of those fun places that also uses RTI, I work in California. None of my schools that I've ever worked at are doing RTI with enough fidelity for us to talk about that as an eligibility model, but come on down. If you're still interested in just listening to that conversation, I am happy to have you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good luck with the rest of your week here. Bye, everyone.